All right. Hi, everybody. So here is part two of our introduction to form, and this one will be hopefully much shorter than the first one, which had a lot to cover, right? And just kind of getting form and the contextualization for it, and also the rounded binary, simple binary paradigm. So this video is just concerned with the idea of ternary and sort of how that is contrasting the idea of binary and specifically the rounded binary form. So if you haven't watched the first video, make sure you go ahead and watch that first. And here we're talking about ternary, which is a three-part form. It is an A, a B, and an A. And each one of those sections has this bar, again, so as we're showing the large-scale formal design, it has the bar between, this is signifying some sort of break, usually like a cadence or a repeat sign or something in the music. Double bars, stuff like that. Large, sort of significant moments. Each section in a ternary, sort of how to think about it, should be able to stand on its own. It's almost like they're individual pieces. Like the A section is its own thing, and the B section is its own thing, and then there's just a return to the A section. We state this whole piece, we have this other piece, and we have a return to the first piece of music. It is not a rounded binary. And it's a difficult kind of distinction to make between the two, where the rounded binary, right, is A, B, A prime. It's a two-part form, 1 and 2. But the second part is a B and an A, where together, adding those two things together, it makes a complement to the A. It's more or less the same length in bars. The ternary, on the other hand, doesn't do that. It's the A, a B, and an A. This B is as significant as the A, not only in like intent and musicality, just like what it means to the piece of music, but it's also just like as long as it's a long section. And then the other distinction for ternary versus rounded binary, this is non-developmental because there's a return to the A, similar to this, except all of the A comes back, or nearly all of the A comes back. And unlike in a rounded binary where a fraction of it comes back, maybe just the beginning comes back and then there's a cadence that gives the idea of the music repeating, but it doesn't repeat in its entirety. In a ternary, it'll do that. It's like, repeat, whole thing, let's go. That's ternary in a nutshell here. The interesting part is not just like what is ternary, but more like how do we differentiate and how do we finesse the difference between the binaries and the ternaries. So what do I want to do? I just want to listen to one ternary with you and point out kind of what it looks like, sort of tricks and quirks of the form, and that'll be it. And then throughout the rest of our formal discussions, we'll move back and forth between them and see some more complexity and nuance, I think, that you're going to have to pull out. And that's, again, what I think is so fun about it and so interesting. So let's listen to Handel. This is the Hornpipe. If you don't think you know this piece, you probably know this piece. If you've listened to NPR or any classical music, it's extremely popular. And let's just go ahead and listen to it. Again, thinking large scale to small, like big to small, right? We're listening for repeats, large sections, where you see double bars. That's what you want to indicate as you're going through the first time. Don't or resist the urge to zoom in and think, okay, well, what was this chord? Okay, what was that chord? You don't need to do that right now. At some points, you will need to, and maybe on your homework you might need to, or you might not need to. But try to think big to small as you're starting to get your head wrapped around form. If you don't, I think you'll get like down in the weeds too much, and you won't. You'll miss stuff. Like you're just going to miss sort of the thought process of the macro understanding, and we want to make sure you get that. Cool. So let's listen. Here is Handel, Water Music. All right. So that is a ternary, right? Oops. And that's it. We're done. No, that is a ternary. Why, right? So you saw me listening the first time. I didn't write this the first time through. You assume, obviously, that the first section is A, right? But we're just listening, just kind of going through. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I circled this G sharp because I thought, oh, well, it's probably modulating or something. And it really doesn't. It's a tonicization. It implies the key of A for a cadence. And then we come right back to the key of D right here. And we're going along, and it's like, cool. Oh, double bar. Interesting. Cool. And they chose not to take the repeat on the recording, which I think is interesting also. And then you're like, oh, great, double bar. And whoa, this is a different piece of music, right? It's like a totally different character. In fact, it goes into the relative minor. We're in the key of B minor. All of a sudden, it's sad. Different quality, different motives, similar like developmental thing, bum ba da dum, but there's a lot of like unity to it, but it, totally different quality to the music. This is quintessential B, big section B, right? And the only thing left to see is as we're listening to it, does it round? Is there like a rounding? Is it like how much of the A comes back? Does any of the A come back? Is this just like a simple binary, right? If it's just an A and a B and that's it, that could be cool. It's going through. We're in the key of B minor. It's a little modulatory. That's all good. Great. Something. Double bar. Strong cadence. 5 and stop. Da capo. Right? And the DC, right? Da capo. Again, if you're a musician and you've played any music, you've seen DCs before, right? So da capo means you go back to the head, the capo, the head, and you take it until the fine. Well, in this case, and in a lot of cases, right, unless there's some sort of like ending or coda, right, you take it to the fine, which is right here. It's the entire A repeated. So our macro kind of analysis of this, right, is A, B, A. Even though the printed music, right, is A, B, DC. The actual aesthetic, like aural understanding is that, and it's a ternary. And specifically, right, what type of ternary is it? It's a ternary, and the first section ends in the key of D, which is the key that we've been in. So it is a sectional ternary. And the second section ends in the key of B, right, which is the key it started in B minor. So this is a sectional ternary. Very common in like Baroque music, less common in like the empirical, this is a sectional ternary, this is a continuous ternary. As we move further through time, what you start to see is like more ambiguity here. And I think I said in the last video, this movement towards the B being very developmental, like very modulatory and sort of interesting, longer and longer and longer, and you start getting this thing called a sonata. And this is a kind of a ternary form, sort of a 3-part form that you'll study a ton, and you've listened to obviously a ton of them. That is much more forward-thinking and modern, and is highly influential to us as like Western listeners in the 21st century. But that's a ternary. They, as like a simple kind of like concept like this, is a sectional ternary, pretty straightforward probably. Again, the sort of differentiation between this form and a rounded binary is where we start to have some fun. And you'll start to look at, homework assignments where you have to kind of make a call. I've said this before, about other assignments and like activities and stuff for this class. What I want you to do is engage in the process. So listen to it and try to write down what you're hearing. if your analysis makes sense, is logical, could be possible, then I'll entertain it as a possibility. If your analysis does not make sense, then I won't. But that's just my way of saying, like, there could be more than one answer. And I think that's kind of the point at this point in college, where you're developing these language skills that you can talk about, music, and try to get at your internal understanding. Okay. So that's ternary. We're going to talk more about ternaries in another video when we talk about this concept of compound ternaries. But that'll be further down the line here. The next one, or maybe even the one after that. Cool. Just let me know if you have questions. Again, make sure you watch the previous video introducing form and rounded binaries and then this. And then seriously though, if you have questions or you want to discuss any of this stuff, just let me know. I'm happy to meet with you and go over any of this again if you need more help.